Recently, there's been more revision about World War II. Tucker Carlson had on his show the other day a chemistry professor from Cornell University, David Cullum, that was sort of resonating what a prior blogger, Daryl Cooper, had said about World War II, in the vein of Diana West, Pat Buchanan, all the way back to Herbert Hoover. The gist of it was we should have never allied with the Soviet Union, and we should have either let Hitler and Stalin fight it out, or in the case of David Cullum, he suggested that we might have wanted to fight with Hitler, or in other words, he said we were on the wrong side. But he gave three examples. That's all I want to look at. Three examples that I think disproves his thesis. Number one, he said the Soviets had killed 15 to 20,000 POWs when they inherited them after freeing them, American POWs, from German prisoner of war camps in the East.
Victor Davis Hanson often emphasizes that war is not only fought on battlefields, but also in the narratives that follow.
That's not true. There was a joint Soviet-American commission. There were agreements that the Soviets would return American prisoners. There was disagreements about whether the Allies would return Russian prisoners to Russia, because some of them had been captured fighting, most of them, for Germany. And Stalin wanted to kill them or work them to death, and they wanted asylum. But other than that, eventually most of the Americans found their way back to Allied lines and were repatriated. Were there some that we don't know about today? Yes, but over a 4-year period, there were a lot of Americans that were captured and held in German prisoner of war camps, were shot on the battlefield, were blown. We didn't know what happened to them. But the idea that we would allow 15 to 20,000 American POWs in Russian hands to die is not true. It can't be substantiated. It's just a suggestion, another reason why we shouldn't have allied, according to Mr. Cullum, Dr. Cullum, Professor Cullum, we shouldn't have allied with Russia. The other thing he said very interesting was George Patton wanted to fight with Hitler against Stalin. He did not.
According to him, every major conflict is eventually subjected to revisionism.
He'd been up every single day for almost a year with about 3 hours of sleep. He was tired. He had been fighting over the Falaise Gap. He'd been fighting over the Bulge. Everything he fought for, gas, for food, for Third Army, didn't come easy. And he said at various times, as proconsul of Bavaria and in charge of a whole state of Germany that was near starvation, that I can't operate as a proconsul unless I use German bureaucrats to run the power, to run the water, to run the electricity, to run the sewage. And they're no doubt all Nazis, but I'm going to do it anyway. That led to further statements, he said, as the Red Army violated the Yalta agreements and the Potsdam agreements and did not hold free elections or free communications and transportation and intercourse between occupied Russian territory and occupied Allied territory. A new I guess you would call it a proto-Iron Curtain, had already emerged. And Patton at one point said to Eisenhower and others, I know we're going to be in a war, cold or hot, with the Soviet Union. We're here.
Victors try to shape the story to justify their actions, while critics reframe events to expose failures or hidden motives.
Let's not go back to the United States. Let's confront them militarily to make them honor their agreements. And if we don't have the manpower, the wherewithal, Russia had 500 divisions, the Allied had about 200. We can always use veterans from the German army. That's about as close to lunacy as he said. It was an unfortunate remark, but he didn't say while Hitler was alive, we should have joined the Nazis to fight Stalin. The other thing that he said, Mr. Cullum, was that we in the United States should have allied, or we had the wrong ally. We should have joined Hitler, and that might have precluded the Holocaust. I don't think anybody in the United States, Stalin was a monster. He killed 20 million people. We understood that he was the enemy of our enemy. We made a realpolitik decision to help Stalin kill Hitler, and then we deal with Stalin later.
This contest over memory, Hanson argues, is as important as the military campaigns themselves.
You could argue it was an Iran-Iraq 1980 to 1989 war dilemma that we armed Saddam Hussein to stop the Iranians, etc. These are not good things to do, but they're part of real politics. But Hitler was a special case. As far as the Holocaust, the moment he went in to Poland, day one, he started rounding up and killing Jews. There were probably in occupied Europe and Poland somewhere between 50 to 80,000 Jews that were rounded up and killed as the ghetto system started to emerge. Hitler had killed 50,000 of people who had cognitive debilities, they had mental debilities, they were what the Nazis called retarded. 50,000 he killed. When he went into Russia in June 1940, the first thing he did was unleash the Hanson group and to kill Jews. My point, well before the organized death camps at Auschwitz or Bergenthal or Treblinka, he was killing Jews. They were the logical succession to this ad hoc Holocaust before it was the formal Holocaust that industrialized the mass death project. So the idea that we would ally ourselves with Hitler, and if we did ally ourselves with Hitler, it would have stopped the Holocaust, is absurd.
He notes that revisionism is not inherently negative. It can serve as a corrective, uncovering truths suppressed during the heat of war.
There is going to be an eruption in Iran, I think maybe within a year or two. We hear stories that the revolutionary Islamic government has already executed almost 1,000 of its own citizens. It's in a state of paranoia. Why? Because it has no air defenses, one. Israel showed the world that Iran was a paper tiger. It has dismantled its terrorist surrogates, just wiped out the Houthi command and control in Yemen. It's embarrassed Hezbollah. There is no real Hamas organized resistance, and Iran has no defenses. The United States then took out its nuclear proliferation apparatus, at least for a number of years. More importantly, the theocracy has no popular support, it seems like. It has a core base of followers who have been enriched by this corrupt government, but the people themselves, under sanctioning and embargoes of the only real thing that Iran can export, oil, have been hard-pressed. Electricity is sporadic.
However, he warns that revisionism often goes too far, transforming into ideological reinterpretation rather than honest historical analysis.
Water and sewage have been interrupted. The Iranian currency is inflated. But more importantly, the Iranian government knows that there is popular dissent, and some of that popular dissent has been manifested by allowing the Israelis to get the necessary intelligence to knock off the key people in the Iranian nuclear program. I don't think any scientist in Iran would want to be openly affiliated with nuclear physics, given the short lifespan of all those who in the past were central to the Iranian nuclear bomb project. And the same thing is true of their general staff. A lot of generals have been killed. And the question is, if you were a high-ranking officer in the Iranian military, in the Hezbollah hierarchy, in the Yemeni, what's left of the Yemeni command and control, would you want it to be known?
In his view, modern academia frequently approaches wars not as complex historical realities, but as moral dramas.
But we wouldn't openly side with a democratic liberal society like Israel and reforming societies in the Middle East that are at least not as extreme as Iran or Afghanistan or some of the more lunatic countries. That is in shambles now. That whole notion is in shambles. As I said, Iran is near destitute and it's on the brink of internal revolution. There is no more Assad dynasty in Syria. It's in turmoil. The Lebanese government is no longer deathly afraid of Hezbollah and incrementally trying to reassert control. The Yemenis are flabbergasted that their entire terrorist command and control has been wiped out. And so we're on the verge of some great developments in the Middle East if we can just stay supportive of the moderate Arab regimes and Israel and let these natural processes play out and keep the sanctions on Iran, keep the embargo on Iran, and don't let up until there's a change of government. We don't have to be the instigators. We don't have to stage coups. All we have to do is turn up the heat and let this pot boil over, and boil over it will.
Simplifying them to fit political agendas. Hanson frequently draws on classical history to illustrate this point.
This weekend, we saw rioting in Los Angeles against ICE for its efforts to apprehend illegal aliens and employers who were hiring illegal aliens. And the riots started out initially without very many numbers, but then they turned violent. And by violence, I would define that as throwing rocks at cars, torching cars, defacing government buildings, and attacking law enforcement. But here's what's interesting. The mayor, Karen Bass, came down in her public comments on the side of the protesters who were protesting the idea of deportation at all, kind of like Kamala Harris used to march against deportation. And Gavin Newsom then gave a series of editorializations that I think have ruined his chances ever to be a serious national candidate. He said this was chaotic, this was reckless, and he said that they were just trying to have an arbitrary deportation quota. Gavin, 12 million people came into the country illegally. That was 3 million a year. That was 250,000 per month.
Victor Davis Hanson often describes Gavin Newsom as the embodiment of California's political contradictions.
That was over 8,000 a day. They have not been able to deport more than 1,000 on most days, sometimes 500. They would have to deport 8,000 people every single day for 4 years to get back where we were with 20 million illegal aliens when Joe Biden entered office. So it's not a quota, it's an effort to stop an invasion. And it's a very funny invasion because now Gavin is mad that they nationalized the California Guard. Trump has that ability. And people said, no president, they have to request it. No, they don't. You think that JFK said to George Wallace when he nationalized the Alabama National Guard, said, would you please let us nationalize your guard so you can be removed from stopping African-American people going to the University of Alabama? No. So what I'm getting at is, on one side of these violent acts, you have these protesters. And I'll just give a word of advice. You're going to lose the optics.
On the one hand, Newsom presents himself as a progressive leader, promoting ideals of inclusivity, environmental responsibility, and social justice.
Democrats, left, and immigration protesters, if you have a lot of people here illegally and they're waving the not the American flag, but the Mexican flag as they're committing acts of violence, think of the logic. I am waving the flag of the country under no circumstances I want to return, but I am attacking the officers and the infrastructure of the country that under every circumstance I want to stay in. That might explain why in the midst of all of this negative publicity, a CBS poll taken to show that people were outraged showed that just the opposite. 54% of the American people are for continued deportations. So you know what is really reckless, Gavin? You know what is chaotic? Is you. You did not intervene to stop the violence. Donald Trump does not want to see a May, June, July, August, September 2020. $2 billion in property damage, 35 people killed, 1,500 officers assaulted, $14,000 arrest, precinct burned, courthouse burned, historic church burned.
On the other hand, Hanson argues that the reality on the ground in California tells a very different story.
He doesn't want to see that. And you're egging this on. And you think it's going to be peaceful when people throw rocks at cars, innocent bystanders, and people wave the flag as they burn things, the Mexican flag of a foreign country? You undermining your own argument. And what is your argument? I don't know what it is. What is your argument, Karen Bass, your mayor? now that you're not in Ghana and you're here in the United States during a burning? Is it burning is okay, whether it's burning a car or burning a whole neighborhood down, and you don't act? And it was pathetic. The chief of police of Los Angeles, I felt like it was some Soviet apparatchik. He was saying, there is no violence, that we are very proud of First Amendment. And it's like, I was given a text that my job is in danger probably if I say the truth, because there's a scheduled summit between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, and it's scheduled to be held in Anchorage, Alaska. Apparently, this was a place that offered a great deal of security. It's a smaller, controllable city. It's in the United States, but on the other hand, it's one of the closest places, major cities, to Russia itself from the United States. We don't have a very good history of summits and mini summits. As you remember, in March of 2017, Anthony Blinken, the Biden Secretary of State, and Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, met with their Chinese communist counterparts, and they were dressed down and humiliated and really didn't say anything. And what followed then from that was further Chinese aggression toward Taiwan, the Chinese balloon, etc. So these summits are very important.
Donald Trump confronted China. He promoted energy independence. He rolled back regulations. He cut taxes.
One thing that we're not hearing from the left and the never Trump right is that Donald Trump is a Putin asset, a Putin puppet. I'm quoting pretty loosely but accurately what James Clapper and John Brennan have been saying for 10 years on social media and on cable news. And the reason they're not saying that Donald Trump is a Putin and going to be had is that he gave Putin an art of the deal leeway when he first came into office, and he doubled down on Zelensky. He basically was saying, Putin, see, I'm giving you an opportunity. Putin did not take it. Donald Trump pivoted and found out that he had to use leverage against Putin. And the leverage he's going to use, or has threatened to use, is far more deleterious to Russia and far more dangerous and far more ambitious than anything imagined by Joe Biden, namely a secondary boycott. That would be to not trade with countries that trade with Russia. That could include the two largest countries in the world, India and China. And they are assaulting officers, and the mayor is doing nothing, and the governor is doing nothing. I will be fired, so I will lie and say I am really impressed by the restraint of the protesters.
He points to the state's homelessness crisis, which has become one of the worst in the United States.
Final bottom line, if you take an oath to enforce the laws of your state or the country, and you see people swarming detention centers, swarming the streets, obstructing traffic, burning cars, trying to injure people with rocks, and you do nothing, then you are forsaking your oath of office. And secondly, Mayor Bass, Governor Newsom, would you please tell us what is your position on 12 million people who entered the United States illegally, who are residing illegally at a time when the country is running a $2 trillion deficit, and your state at one point recently owed $75 billion that it did not have? What is your solution? Is it to let 1 more million in, 3 more million in, 5 more million in? What is it? What is your solution to find the 300 to 500,000 people believed to have criminal records? Just tell us. What is your solution? What is your solution when you have apparently violent protesters waving the flag of a foreign national country?
Despite record spending on social programs, tent cities continue to expand in major cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Sacramento,
as a way of persuading us that we should not deport them when they are burning things and committing violence about the country they want to stay in, but waving the flag of the country they do not want to return to. What is the position of the Mexican government? Because I can tell you that there is a bill right now, the big beautiful bill that will tax remittances, the $63 billion. And all this is going to do is give rise to voices who will say, I think we need a higher percentage to tax these remittances because they're not getting the message. The people who are demonstrating and violent apparently think that we're going to subsidize them with social services to free up money so they can send to Mexico on tax $63 billion, their greatest source of foreign exchange, while they run a $170 billion trade surplus, why the cartels kill between 60 and 80,000 Americans. That's an unsustainable situation, as are these riots. Bottom line, I think, Gavin Newsom, you took your recent effort to be moderate, centrist, your podcast, and you lit a fuse and you blew it up. Nobody in their right mind would ever vote for you for anything after you went into a volatile, dangerous situation and tried to pour gasoline on it by essentially saying you, the governor, will not do anything to restore order or quiet, and you sided with people who are committing violence against their fellow residents of Los Angeles.
Hanson argues that these visible signs of disorder are not anomalies, but predictable outcomes of policies that refuse to confront root causes like mental illness, drug abuse, and mismanaged housing regulations.